purpose of this record.
This is the podcast about the golden age of hip-hop, dance, 808 freestyle, the culture, the happenings, and the stories of early hip-hop from the artists who were there. Across all socials, subscribe at iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, Stitcher, and many more at Old School Rewind. Welcome to the Old School Rewind podcast with Aaron Goodwin.
My boy right there, LA Radio, Don Amici, thank you. This week, we keep celebrating the mixtape. It's episode 2 of the mixtapes, and we'll continue with the New York Scratch Masters.
You say 1 for the trouble, 2 for the time. Come on, y'all, let's break this.
Welcome back to the Old School Rewind podcast. This is Aaron Goodwin from the 35 Acres and a Microphone podcast farm. We're doling out the hits from 1982 to 1989. Hits, if you were part of the underground hip-hop scene, right? They were hit-in, not necessarily hits on the radio. We worked on that. And I was one of the guys that helped do it right around this area where I live in Central California. The radio was not playing any kind of black or hip-hop music in these territories that were smaller in comparison to larger cities, the bigger cities, and bigger melting pots, right? So we would only get whatever the radio would put out. And I graduated from high school. I got to a radio station that was dabbling in rhythm radio. Our rhythm radio hookup was Sacramento or San Francisco being here. And Stockton had a pretty hip radio station at AM 1420. And a guy that I love, John Hampton, bless his heart. He's up there. If you ever get up to Yosemite, ask for a guy by the name of John Hampton. He's from Detroit, and that's a metropolis, an urban metropolis, as I refer to. He came to Stockton, California, which is a melting pot of sorts, but still majority a white city, but a big city, a rougher city. And at that time, he knew what was being played on the radio in Detroit, so his ear brought us the SOS Band and Loose Ends Hanging on a String and One Way Cutie Pie, in addition to Oh Mickey by Tony Basil, Jack and Diane by John Cougar, all the same time. He was putting it all together. He had that foresight. And that's just my opinion. I don't know if that's actually how it goes for John. But he brought that here, and it infected me. And then there's popping and breakdancing. And I went to a high school assembly, and the Master City Playboys were the group at the high school across the way. I'm 50 now. This is 1986. But I believe in 1984, you've ever heard of Scott Brooks? He was a coach, played for the Houston Rockets, amongst others, and most recently was a coach of the Oklahoma City team. He's now in New York. Scott Brooks was a senior in high school, and it was like the championship game. And some cats that went to East Union were named the Master City Playboys. Trent and Neptune and Lil Mike, and there was a few of them. Pardon me if I don't get you guys' names. The halftime show comes out. This is a heated game. Scott Brooks is the best basketball player on the face of the earth, right? You know, going to a 30 or 40-point game. He hit these three-pointers before there was three-point shots. I don't even think they marked the courts off at that time for three-pointers. Three-pointers were like a new thing. The lights dim. A strobe light goes on in the back door of the gymnasium. The door opens up, and I hear, and I'm done. These guys come out in that strobe light, animated walk, slow motion, the tick, the wave, nothing on the ground, purely standing up. Changed my life. I mean, absolutely changed my life. So I'm married to this radio station, an AM radio station out of Stockton, California, where I actually retired from the past year. Isn't that weird? So in 1980, I'm the kid out at the fairgrounds talking to the DJ, bothering the hell out of him. In 1989, 3 years in, I work at this radio station. Almost 20 years at the same radio station. I did country. In 94, I got out of rhythm radio, started doing country. Got out of country, went up to Denver, did a morning show on Jammin' 101.5 for about 2 seconds. I didn't know I had sleep apnea. Isn't that bad? Took this great job and get to an elevated place like Denver. I wasn't sleeping. Couldn't breathe. Anyways, my travels bring me home, and most recently I ended back up at KSTN AM 1420, and we go country. And we had an FM translator attached, the new 105.9 The Bull, up until May of last year. And that radio station, that guy, John Hampton, knew how to do it. He knew how to get those songs on. For me, it was a life changer. So I'm trying to say, these podcasts, I'm here in a studio, on this big farm. And folks will tell you, critics, consultants, people that listen to your podcast will say, be real. Tell people exactly what you're talking about. Tell folks. So, right? Is apnea too much? Is saying that I live in a white country area too much? I don't know. I do know that you're here to hear the music or an interview or whatever we're doing. I spilled the beans just moments ago. Today we tribute the mixtape. Last week, the New York Scratch Masters. The weeks before, after Cameron Paul's death in the end of March, we did 4 weeks of Cameron Paul's mixes here because I'm from the West Coast. And then go search around YouTube and grabbed up some of those great mixtapes that were made in the East, in the South, in Florida. They're all coming up. We'll do a few weeks on mixtapes. And you can hear how dance music, white Euro music turns into dance music, turns into hip-hop. We'll take that ride with you for the next few weeks. So let's get to it. We missed a couple of the New York Scratch Masters last week. I got them up now. We'll start. And then we'll segue into an Ultimix project, which is going to be a little bit more polished. And the sound is going to be a little bit better because it was later on in time. And they're using different technology. But it's the same thing, the same concept. It's still multi-track recording, pre-digital. That's a big deal. Pre-digital. Now we do everything on computers. I'm talking now into a microphone in my studio into a computer. And I can see a wave like if you're in the hospital and you see the bouncing when the heart beats, or a flat line, right? Flat line. Well, when it's not a flat line, we can see our voices now, which is incredible technology. Changes the game for sure. And we'll do that evolution together. Let's get into the New York Scratch Masters right now as we start off our Old School Rewind podcast for today, Friday, May 12th. Thank you, and let's go. Hear the record being worn out around the spindle and the vibration hitting the spindle back and forth. We used to have to put a piece of paper there in the hole of the record before you dropped it on the spindle to take up any space because you've jacked the record up, right? So be listening for that throughout. When you hear those scratches, you'll hear a little bit of a knock, a vibration. These are the New York Scratch Masters on the Old School Rewind podcast. We could have said OMG back in the day. That would have been an OMG right there. You hear that shit? Scratch Masters.
nuclear war is the latest talk. The bomb could explode where you walk. But this is the land of the strong and the free, the land of love and liberty. We better stop playing and start to pray, cause we're not promised another day. Rock and roll, Donkey Kong, can't you hear the brass band? Rock song!
We're in the mix with the New York Scratch Masters on the Old School Rewind podcast. These days, you listen to the professional cheerleaders. You hear them doing these mixtapes like this, speeding the music up and whatnot. Oh, that's been going on since at least 1982 or so. Right here, the New York Scratch Masters are in the mix. This would be a great shot for a counting BPM session at 30-second intervals to get your BPM per minute. Listen to what these DJs, the sounds they're coming up with in the 80s. Blowing on the edge of a straw, what's that noise? Now remember, these are done in studios most of the time, these mixes that we're listening to here, these mixtapes. As multi-track recording got more popular, these mixes became more intricate. So these songs would be playing, and people would be breakdancing and popping at the club, right? Nobody, till all night long. Just go, 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 go. Cameron Paul used to go with the song to song, and then those mixes started turning into productions, just like you're listening to now off wax from the New York Scratch Masters. We're able to glean these versions of the New York Scratch Masters mixtapes from YouTube, so we apologize for any kind of inferior audio. Normally we try to bring you the great audio on the Old School Rewind podcast. Who wants to listen to bad quality? But if we got no choice, and we got to dig back in time, we got you. I'm here. Everybody just wanted to be Planet Rock in the end, which you can hear in the background. You know, that Kraftwerk numbers that you're hearing right there. How ill was that? There's a lot going on right there. That was so cool. What the hell's he talking about? Must be numbers, dude. How ill. Kraftwerk's the start of this whole thing, y'all. Part of the mix we're playing from the Old School for the New York Scratchmasters. Yeah, I got that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm from California. I got that. Quattro. All right. So the studio guys figured out to put these scratches in. Early sampling comes from the MIDI keyboard, right? They would sample into the keyboard and then trigger from a keyboard what you're hearing. These hit in rapid succession. Right? Because nobody's DJing that fast back then. Nobody had Serato buttons, looping buttons, sync buttons. They would sync to multi-track. And what that means is they could have, a million shots at it until they get it right. Always popular back then to put in a cartoon or TV theme. As you're hearing Adam's Family right there, clicked in. You may not know nothing about this, or most likely you do know everything about this. That's why you're on this particular podcast, really a niche podcast, because people really weren't into hip-hop back then. From 1982 to 1989, right around there, and we'll even take late R&B from 79 and 80. We don't get too far back there, but your SOS bands, which, Raouf, man, shout out back at me. Talk about SOS band, Mary. One of the most popular popping and breakdancing jams of the time. Al Mafish from Hashim. You're listening to the Old School Rewind podcast. My name's Aaron Goodwin from the 35 Acres and a Microphone podcast farm. I bring you the Old School Fridays. It's going to be a bumper here, an extra edition. Today, May 12th, we got the New York Scratch Masters we've dug out of a dark, deep hole and are presenting to you here. We haven't even got to the Ultramix series yet. I'm going to play an Ultramix here coming up about 10 minutes after the New York Scratch Masters do their thing. You're going to hear every great pop and dance and quote-unquote white song from the time back in the 80s. These guys put it together in a huge mix. It's incredible. The Ultramix series. We're going to get to the Ultramix series, too. New York Scratch Masters just did it in the mix. Now the Ultramix crew is up. Listen to this. How many songs are interspersed throughout this mix? Try to count them. I'll put a track listing up at the website, oldschoolrewind.com, or just look down from where you picked us up on the download, especially if you're from our website. I mean, here, Cameron Paul started this stuff for us. You know, Egyptian Lover and Lonzo and those guys. I think Lonzo picked up on this. Egyptian Lover was doing his own thing. It was Uncle Jam's Army was a different sound. But this lay in Steve Winwood and quote-unquote white songs in the mix was unheard of. They be doing it all the time now. But back then, it wasn't easy. There was no computers. Enjoy the Ultramix on the Old School Rewind podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Grace Jones, slave to the rhythm.
I like to shout them out myself, but who wants to hear all that? I'll whisper it. C'est la vie, Robbie Neville.
This is what Edith Piaf used to say.
That was the jam, man. You're hearing the beginning of dance music, too. All test. Everything experimental at that time. Michael Jackson's little sister really made a name for herself in the 80s.
Who's that eat that nasty fruit? It's Gent. Trippin'. Who's jamming to my nasty groove? Gent. Nasty boys don't mean a thing, God. Oh, you nasty boys. I could learn to like this. Listen up.
That's Midnight Star there, and who else? Oh, the Bangles.
Learn to like this.
This is funky.
Listen up.
5 Star. Where the hell's 5 Star at? You can talk to them. New Shoes to Prince. I talked to Jennifer. Her and her hubby are so cool. From New Shoes. This is episode 32 of the Old School Rewind podcast. Go back for the New Shoes podcast about, I don't know, 15 episodes or so, maybe? Great folks.
1 9 8 6 8 6.
Now we rewind the Old School podcast. More of that golden age for you in the mix.
Kiss.
You know, there's more New Shoes. They were so influential at the time. Me Too moving all the way with Gwen Guthrie right there. We're in the mix, the Ultimix.
Grace Jones to the rhythm. Grace Jones. Grace Jones.
You ever seen Boomerang, right, with Eddie Murphy, Robin Gibbons, Chris Rock when he had his crooked ass teeth?
Music non-stop.
Grace Jones was the crazy model, right? She wanted to have a perfume that smelled like sex, right? Took off her chonies and rubbed it on the poor guy's nose. And her name was Strange, but she wanted to be called Strange, right? It was Grace Jones you just heard in the mix.
Ask a question, blank faces, read the news and turn the pages. Watch them play a different game, and no one knows your name. No one knows your name.
Check CSAC credit here on this Ultimix, number 8, the 1986 flashback medley. Bradley Hinkle and Les Massengill are the mixers. Credit due. That's one of my favorite Madonna songs right there. Open Your Heart.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
The 1986 flashback medley you're listening to would be my senior year. These were the songs in my senior year. Maybe yours too if you're 50. Born in 1968. It was sure great to hear Whitney Houston when she could get through a whole song. I mean, rest in peace, Whitney, but... we know Girlfriend's been off on a trail in a song before. Got to Vapors. Ooh, or that E.G. Daily playing right now. She was on Pee Wee Herman. She's a TV star also. That was a great song. Starpoint there. Saw him at grad night at Disneyland. Your ears have not deceived you. We've traveled back in time to 1986. As Expose sings, this podcast happens every Friday. I try to offer a little insight to the music, where my head was. A lot of people, I find out their head was right where mine was at the same time. If that was you, reach out to me. Facebook is the easiest place. Old School Rewind Podcast. Put podcast on there, don't forget. And thank you for making us, at times, one of the biggest downloads on the Apple Podcast Music Chart. Top 5. Proud of it. And what makes me the guy, you ask? I was on the radio at this time. Just got out of high school. These were the songs that we were trying to get on the radio, especially if it's a black song. So anything through here you heard that was black, in 86 was lucky to have gotten on the radio at that time. With so much resistance at Rock 40 and quote-unquote white music radio stations that
You got the brawn, you got the brain, you want money.
it was crazy. This is dance music. You hear the vocoders. You can hear how hip-hop starts by listening through the songs. And rest in peace, Jermaine Stewart.
She's got it. Yeah, baby, she's got it. I'm your Venus, I'm your fire, your desire. Well, I'm your Venus, I'm your fire, your desire.
There was a color wall being broke down at radio, commercial radio, outside of Saturday night. But in this area, I'm one of the first to get it on commercial radio. We had KUOP. Shouts to Brian Allen Sampson, my boy. A lot of people know Brian if they're in the business, but I knew Brian before then. He was the guy giving us our Twilight 22 and our Royal Cash, those types of songs on his Saturday Night Mix show. And then I carried that legacy as he went on from college. I carried the legacy at commercial radio until I started playing country in 1994. Well, we darn broke the radio. The Chronic album had hit the radio, and I think my work was done. Took us a long time to get music and hip-hop on the radio, and after hearing this mumbling stuff, I'm not so sure. I mean, shout out to the boys for getting their money strong right off the get compared to the older acts that didn't get that money. I talked to my friend Stevie B, and he said, I'm proud for these brothers out right now, you know, and I asked him about the direction of music and what he thought it was going to be as we headed into the future, and he was just proud that brothers were getting paid, right off the front. He goes, you know, you see them flashing all that gold and all that jewelry, you know, these boys are making it. You know, and Stevie B made it. It made money, but not the kind of ghetto gold that they make now. Right? E40 will tell you that. He's a king of ghetto gold. Anyways, this podcast, a fun one, where we go back between 1982 and 1989 and either talk to an artist from that time or promote an album from that time, track by track, or what we're doing now is we got started in with Cameron Paul, and on some message boards, there was a lot of people talking about mixtapes all across the U.S. and how everybody had their version of mixtapes. My exposure was here in San Francisco, so I'm a Cameron Paul guy. Or go to Los Angeles. Whatever was happening there, we weren't paying attention to the names. But Cameron was our guy. But I do remember all of those New York mixtape records coming out. And Lonzo tells the story. That was their way to make money, their little grind. And what you're listening to effectively when you're hearing these mixes, except for that Ultimix, that's a little bit newer, Any of these old-time mixed tapes, mixed records. These cats were doing these illegally. So they're making these mixes, and they go down and print their singles at the record store. This was Lonzo's gig. He'd go down to the record place, give him the master. They give him, 100 records, and then he'd go sell them. Right? Well, that's bootlegging. So they're the early bootleggers, what we're listening to now, these mixtapes. The guys that got them on wax. And all I'm doing is searching YouTube to find them. But through high school, popping, breaking, that guy, I was that guy in school. It just wasn't popular. It started getting popular. It just wasn't popular, especially in the adult circles. And again, I'm telling you where I live. Live in a very rural area of Central California. But we have Stockton near us. And we're just an hour from Sacramento. We're just an hour from San Francisco. A couple hours south to Fresno. 3 hours more, you're in Los Angeles. The infection was real. Let's get a bonus on for you here. Just a song from those times that you picked from the mix and you never figure it out. I remember going to LA Connection, finally finding out what the name of this track was. I had to special order it from LA Connection, the record store on Charter Way. Orale! In Stockton, California, where back in the day you didn't want to be on a Saturday night when the cruise was going if you didn't have brown skin. Can I say it like that? I did. Truth. I'll play a song called Slack by the group Slack. And it's actually John Roby, who, of course, along with Arthur Baker, did the whole Sonic Force, Planet Patrol, the Arthur Baker sound, Tommy Boy, the front of it. I love this jammy. We'll end the podcast with it. Slack. Hopefully we'll talk to you next Friday. Worldwide at oldschoolrewind.com, iTunes, Stitcher. Where do you find your podcast? YouTube, iHeart. We're there. Anywhere. Type in Old School Rewind or go to oldschoolrewind.com. Get linked up from my website. Okay? Thank you. We can't do it without you. And it's old school all the way, baby.
This is the Old School Rewind. Share and subscribe now at oldschoolrewind.com.